At 11:14 p.m. on December 19, 1944, the Belgian village of Chenu was a frozen graveyard of shattered stone and black ice. Oberstleutnant Klaus von Richter sat high in the cupola of his Tiger II, the King Tiger, feeling the invincible weight of 70 tons of Krupp steel beneath him. He adjusted his leather gloves, looked through his Zeiss optics, and felt a smirk touch his lips. To him, the Americans were a broken force of disorganized amateurs, retreating into the tree line like frightened rabbits. In the next 40 seconds, von Richter would be screaming as the air in his lungs turned to fire. 300 yards away, tucked into the hollowed-out remains of a collapsed stone bakery, sat Private Silas Thorne. He wasn't holding a bazooka. He wasn't calling in coordinates for an airstrike. He was shivering, his knuckles raw and bleeding from the cold, staring at a series of rusted pipes and glass jugs he had rigged to a timber beam. This was the blacksmith's forge. It was a contraption that violated every standing order of the U.S. Army. It was a chaotic, unproven nightmare of improvised chemistry that flipped armored doctrine on its head, and it was explicitly forbidden by high command. Silas Thorne didn't learn how to kill at Fort Benning. He learned it in the Bethlehem steel mills of Pennsylvania. Before the draft board called his name, Thorne spent 12 hours a day as a foundry caster. He understood the anatomy of heat. He knew exactly how molten slag moved through a channel, how it sought the lowest point, and how it could shatter tempered steel if applied to a specific thermal stress point. He spent years thinking in flow rates and understanding the slag line. When he enlisted, the Army saw a quiet, soot-stained laborer. His instructors were baffled by his unorthodox methods during demolition training. While other recruits were focused on the blast radius of a C2 charge, Thorne was busy calculating the thermal wick of the casing. They marked him down as a slow learner, a man who couldn't grasp the standardized way of doing things. They were wrong. He wasn't slow. He was calculating a different kind of math. By midnight, the tactical problem was undeniable. The German 1st SS Panzer Division had turned the narrow corridor into a kill zone. A single King Tiger and 2 Panther tanks were bottlenecked in the street, their frontal armor literally untouchable by any standard-issue American weapon available to the exhausted paratroopers. The casualty list was a testament to the failure of rigid doctrine. Corporal Leo Rossi, 21, from Queens, New York, had tried to flank the Tiger with a satchel charge. He was cut in half by an MG-42 before he crossed the gutter. He left behind a wife and a 3-month-old daughter he had only seen in a blurry black-and-white photograph. PFC Sam Tex Jenkins, 19, died 10 minutes later trying to use a bazooka that simply couldn't penetrate the Tiger's 150mm sloped glasses plate. Captain Sterling, a West Point graduate with a clean uniform and a voice that still carried the ego of the academy, stood in the command post. He stared at his field manual. "We wait for the 743rd Tank Battalion," he snapped, ignoring the groans of the wounded. "We do not engage with tricks. We follow the book." Thorne didn't listen to the captain. He had been observing the Panther tanks through a crack in the bakery wall. He noticed a tiny flaw the West Point strategists had missed, the specific angle of the engine deck's ventilation slots when the tanks climbed the slight 4-degree incline of the village's main street. He realized that he could drop a high-viscosity incendiary mix at a 22-degree downward trajectory. It wouldn't just explode on the surface. It would flow. It would follow the slag line straight into the fuel pumps. Thorne presented the idea to Sterling. He was met with a sneer. "You're suggesting we use industrial refuse against the pride of the Wehrmacht? Get back to your post, Private, or I'll have you court-martialed for unauthorized field modifications and waste of fuel." Thorne didn't go back to his post. He went rogue. In the dark, he gathered magnesium shavings from a downed Messerschmitt, industrial-grade grease from a captured supply truck, and high-octane aviation fuel. He worked in secret, rigging a gravity-fed forge in the rafters of the bakery overlooking the road. The air in the bakery smelled of fermented flour and the sharp, acidic sting of Thorn's chemical cocktail. The mud sucked at his boots as he shifted his weight. He waited. The lead panther, commanded by Untersturmfuhrer Hans Weber, rumbled into the kill zone. Thorn checked his marks, 14 inches off the ground, 480 yards from the bend, 43 degrees. The vibration of the 700-horsepower Maybach engine shook the floorboards. Thorn's sweat was freezing on his forehead. He gripped the release wire. He exhaled halfway, held, squeezed. The forge didn't explode. It roared. A pressurized stream of thick, white-hot liquid poured from the rafters, hitting the Panther's rear deck with the precision of a machinist's tool. The magnesium flared. The grease clung to the metal. The fire searched for air, finding it inside the engine compartment. Short, punchy screams erupted from the hatch. Weber tried to climb out, but the forge had turned the steel into a melting furnace. The second tank, a Tiger II, tried to reverse, but Thorn had rigged a secondary tripwire trap. Impact. The Tiger's fuel lines went next. The street became a river of fire. 12 armor crews, some of the most decorated men in the German army, were incinerated in the very machines they thought made them gods. By dawn, the untouchable German column was a row of blackened, hollowed-out husks. Thorn's blacksmith's forge had cleared the pass, saving the lives of the remaining 120 men in his company. In 1946, the Army's technical manual for improvised anti-armor warfare was updated to include gravity-fed incendiary tactics. They used Thorn's calculations, they used his flow rate logic, but they never mentioned his name. Captain Sterling received a Bronze Star for overseeing the tactical defense of Chenoo. Silas Thorn returned to Pennsylvania. He didn't ask for a medal, he didn't write a book. He went back to the Bethlehem steel foundries, watching the molten metal flow through the channels, never telling a soul about the night he turned a Belgian street into a blacksmith's shop. He had steel to pour. If you found this story compelling, please like this video. Subscribe to stay connected with these untold histories.